Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome to the series of building an end-to-end production grade RAG application. So this is the final episode of this series, and in the previous 5 episodes we have already built the complete application. So if you have missed that, please go ahead and check out that. So just to give you the quick glimpse, this is the application that we have built, which is a AI powered investor intelligence platform, which is for investors in order to review the company last performance, and based on that they can decide whether to invest in that organization or not. And again, it is a AI powered application. So if you have really missed this, I would highly recommend go ahead and check out my previous videos. You will get the link in the description below. So in the final episode, now we will be talking about what and all things that we have missed while building this particular application. Rather, I can say what are the improvements that we can do on top of the application that we have built. So let's get started. Let's go ahead and do a quick recap of the series that we have built. So first of all, from the architecture perspective, like we have started with the architecture, and in which we have built an end-to-end architecture design. And for designing this application, we have used the tools called draw.io, which is a very famous tool available in order to draw your architecture diagram, or you can use another tool called Scalability you can use in order to again plot the logical architecture diagram. So I specifically used draw.io in order to build the physical architecture, and Scalability in order to build a logical architecture. Then we have built an modular fast API backend application. Then we have built an Postgre metadata and persistent database system. Then from the AI and search perspective, we have used Azure OpenAI to feed an LLM capability. Then we have used Azure AI Search as a vector store. From the containerization perspective, we have used Docker in order to containerize the application, and ACR in order to store the image. And from the deployment perspective, we have used a cicd GitHub action in order to trigger the automated workflow, and we have deployed it using a Azure Kubernetes Service. And at the end, we have built an end-to-end CI/CD pipeline as well. Yeah, so the thought process was to keep the application simple, start and build an end-to-end application starting from the architecture design to building an end-to-end deployment pipeline. So let's see what and all details that we can improve now. So first of all, let's see from the security perspective. Now, from the security perspective, currently the application is accessible to all the users in public, right? Now, that is not how it works in the organization. In organization, you want to restrict the application usage. And as this is being an AI powered application, you are really concerned about the cost associated with it, right? You don't want the outside people to access your application. And from that perspective, first of all, you will have to think from the user authentication perspective. So we have not built any auth mechanism in the project that we have built, but definitely there is an improvement opportunity where you can enable a Microsoft Entra ID, that is Azure Active Directory. Now, so as we have used Azure in order to build the all resources, and all the application is built on Azure Cloud, so I'll stick to Azure Cloud related services as well. So for the user authentication, definitely you can use Azure Active Directory, which gives us the feasibility, or which helps us understand who are the users available in the organization and what are their roles, email IDs. So that information we can get it from the Azure Active Directory. Then second one is the single sign-on. Now, single sign-on is basically, let's say in your organization, you might be maintaining multiple passwords, right? Let's say you have one password in order to log into the email, another password to log into the Teams, for example, to log into your Jira application and whatnot. What this single sign-on application does, it gives a feasibility with one password you can log into multiple applications. So you can use your email ID and the same password with which you can connect to the multiple applications. So you can enable that single sign-on. And again, there are ways with which you can enable it. On Microsoft, we have ways in order to enable these single sign-ons. You can integrate that. Then from enhancing the security perspective, you can enable a multi-factor authentication, which gives a extra protection layer. Through this multi-factor authentication, you can send an OTP before logging into the application. So that's how you can enable the MFA as well. And at the last, that is a role-based access control again, which is very much important. So currently, if you can go to the application and see, let's say this particular part where we are ingesting the report. Now, if you want only managers to access this particular upload option, then you can add role-based access control. If manager is logging in, then only you can show this particular ingest report option to the managers. If normal users are logging in, then you can only show these particular rest of the features and chatbot options, something like that. So with this, you grant access for the super users who can perform some actions. Like, let's say if you want one particular super users to delete these records, then you grant those permissions, like only super users will be able to delete the records. So that's how the role-based level access is managed through this RBAC. Then comes to the secret management. Now, currently, whatever API keys, connection details that we have used, we are storing those details onto the GitHub secrets or into the environment files. In the real industry, we follow a key vaults. Like on Azure, we have a Azure Key Vault, which is a very good service, which is a central management service in order to store all your secrets. Now you can create a single key vault in order to store all your project secret. You can all add all the project secrets into that key vault, or you can add the secrets from multiple projects as well. And if two projects are sharing some of the common secrets, you can maintain those on the centralized management key vault. And also you can enable a secret rotation policies, meaning you can add a secret expiry after, let's say, 6 months or a year, so that after that time frame, right, you can go ahead and renew the secrets in order to maintain the security standards. The next one is the manage identity. Now manage identity, so what happened is currently we have used the username and password in order to connect to the systems. Also we have used API keys in order to connect to our embedding model, connect to our OpenAI GPT-5 model. But what happens in real industry, we don't use key based authentication, because by mistake if someone push the key into the GitHub, right, that key will be exposed. And you don't want that. You don't want the other users to access the applications through these keys, and there are a security breach that can happen easily. And in order to avoid that, we use manage identity, which is a password less authentication, and it reduces the risk of attacks as well. So how it works is manage identity. For example, we have two services created, ACR and AKS. Now what happens, our AKS service talk to the ACR in order to pull the image, right? And we have used username and password in order to pull this particular image. So for that username and password, we have given access to pull and push the image basically. But in real industry, what happens, instead we enable manage identity. That way what happens, right, this AKS hits the request to the ACR in order to pull the image, and then ACR identifies, okay, AKS is one of the application which is trying to access who is trying to pull the image. Now who is this AKS? It knows that, okay, through manage identity, okay, this is the application which is built on the same tenant. It gets that detail information. It is hosted on the same platform. It is hosted on the same network. So it identifies the network configuration of these applications, and through this manage identity we can define the permissions. Okay, if this AKS is coming, then only you then only you allow that particular AKS to pull the image. So that way you can increase or enhance your security as well. And at the end comes to the network security. So currently our application is exposed to the public user, right? If you want to expose your application to limited folks, you can add those limited folks under your private endpoints. We call it as virtual network. So with VNet integration, what happens, let's say you have a group of people, let's say 100 people working in your organization, and you want only those 100 people to access the application. Now by means, if any another application gets your application link, let's say that the external user knows the link of your application, they try to access your application, what happens that they are not behind this particular virtual network, so they will not be able to access the application even though they have the link. Only these users, they can access the application, and that you can achieve through VPN and all other stuff, right? You can enable that private endpoint. So that is again another a network security policy that you can enable, and that basically restricts the public user, the public user to allow enter into our application, and which builds a zero trust model. In the zero trust model, what happens, you grant several permissions that, okay, if any applications are calling, or if, let's say, zero trust model, meaning, let's say two services are talking, let's say PostgreSQL is talking to let's say, for example, backend application, right? So in this case, what happens, you build a zero trust. If backend application is hitting this query, then only you allow and share the details with the backend application. So with those, if there is anyone else apart from the backend application accessing the PostgreSQL, then you block the access. So with this, you can enhance the trust between the application, and you can increase the network policy. Then from the reliability perspective, how you can scale this particular application. So from the reliability perspective, first of all, you should enable a monitoring and observability. Currently that is missing from the application. So from the monitoring perspective, right, you can build your custom dashboard, like you can use Power BI in order to build the dashboard, a Tableau, those services you can use, BI tools you can use in order to build the analytics dashboard, which shows how many users are logging into your application, then what are the queries that they are hitting. You can build a customized dashboard for your managers to review the performance, whoever users are using the application. All those details that you can manage by building a centralized logging dashboard. Then from the application perspective, you can build an application health dashboard, like you can build an APM logs, that application performance monitoring logs. You can use a services like Datadog monitoring in order to capture the logs. or there are other services with which you can check the performance, like you can check what is the compute that is getting used, right? Then what are the how many users are hitting the request, what is the traffic coming to your application. So you can check all those details on the application health kind of dashboards, so that you can build. Then comes to the Kubernetes scalability. So currently we have a fixed size of nodes and fixed size of pods. So we created two nodes, right, in this application. So we created node 1 and node 2. Now in these node 1 and node 2, let's say we have only two pods created, P1 and P2. So what happens, horizontal pod, meaning in a horizontal pod scaling, let's say 100 users are accessing the application and P1 is sufficient to handle a load of 100 users. Now let's say your user persona has increased to 150. So in this case, what will happen in the horizontal scaling, it will spin up a new pod and your new pod will go ahead and serve the user. So the extra 50 users that are coming in, right, those will go to the P2 and 100 users will keep serving from the P1. So that's how you can increase the pods. Now, then the cluster auto scaling is, let's say you have reached the limit. Let's say this particular node 1 is having a capability to serve only 200 users, and you receive 201st users. So that first user will be redirected to the new node, and here again you will have P1 and P2 kind of pods. So this will start consuming from the P1. So whenever the moment you shift to create a new cluster, that's what it's called, a auto scaling cluster. So here, node 1 and node 2 are nothing but you can consider them as a VM, which provides the compute power. So you can build a completely new compute power. Let's say if this is 16 GB machine and which is sufficient to serve 200 users, and if you get new request, you again build another 16 GB machine in order to serve the new user. And that's how the auto scaling happens, right? So if we take an example of a cricket match again, so let's say if 1 million users are watching, let's say IPL on Jio Hotstar, right? So what happens on the application, it will serve the users, but the moment the match these users are, let's say so these viewers are before starting the match. Let's say if actual match starts, then that number can go to, let's say, 4 million, and in that case you want your sustainable application which can automatically scale up and keep serving the new users. So for those reasons we need to work on the Kubernetes scalability, and you can enable the auto scaling, so that part also you can integrate into the application. Then comes to the disaster recovery. You need to think from the disaster recovery perspective as well. What happens by mistake someone deletes the database? So you should have an backup data set available which can keep serving the user even though something bad happens to your database. And you should build an automated recovery strategies as well. The moment you see some issues, you should pull the data from the backup that where you are storing in. And also you can enable a multi-region deployment with high availability architecture, meaning you should not deploy all your application, let's say on East US, right? If anything goes wrong, you should have another this particular East US is, let's say, serving the particular region 1 users. Then you should have another cloud region from where you can search to the region 2. That way it gives visibility, even though if the region 1 is down, your region 2 can keep serving. So that's how you can build an high scalable architecture as well. Moving ahead, how you can think from the expanding the application beyond RAG application. So you can enable an advanced architecture by integrating a multi-agent framework. You can increase the capabilities. Also, you can build an agent orchestration framework along with. From the AI governance perspective, we have not added any guardrails. Whatever question that user is asking, right, prompting into the chat, we are directly hitting that to the GPT-5 model. But you should add some guardrails as well. Like the model should only generate the response related to the investor related questions, right? It should not give answers to the generalized question. So you can add those guardrails. Basically, you can add a responsible AI controls as well. It should not generate any harmful content. So those things you can manage from the AI governance perspective. So whenever you work on the real industry project, right, you need to think from these perspective as well. Whenever you are building the application, you will have to actually add these guardrails. You will have to perform intensive testing that your application should not generate any harmful content, and all those things that you need to make sure. Apart from that, you need to control the cost as well. Let's say if your 100 users are accessing the application and the cost is, let's say, $100 a month. So you will have to think from, let's say, if the number of users are increasing, your cost will also increase, and how you can manage that cost, how you can keep tracking those costs. You should add some threshold. That cost should not go beyond that threshold based on your budget allocated to your project and all that stuff, right? So those, from that perspective also, we think whenever we are building an actual application. From data engineering perspective, so currently we are, whenever user is uploading the PDF, we are directly retrieving the content and storing that into the vector store, but we don't have any intermediate storage. Ideally, we should have one intermediate storage to keep that particular file, maybe a temporary, a volatile storage, so that if anything goes wrong in the vectorization, right, you can again pull back that particular PDF file. Then comes to the DevOps platform. You can build an multiple pool of environments. So currently we have just built one environment, but ideally in the industry we follow a multi environment deployment approach, right? Like you follow dev, testing, production, like this. You can build the multiple environments, and again it varies based on the project. Some environment follow three standard deployments, some follow four, and it varies. And accordingly then you can work on later on the incremental deployment as well. So those are the some things that you can improve from the architecture perspective as well. And coming to the last, the key learnings that we have obtained out of this particular course is, first we have learned the AI and RAG fundamentals. We have understood the retrieval augmented generation, the OpenAI, and the resources that are required in order to build the RAG application. Then comes to the cloud native deployment. So we have built the deployment using fast API backend. So now we are aware about the fast API backend as well. Then we have Dockerized the application. So we have gain understanding on Docker containerization. We have built our own Docker image. Then we have stored that image on the container registry. So we have understood the resource from Azure, that is ACR, and finally we have deployed the application on AKS, which is a deployment service. And then also we have built an CI/CD pipeline. So we have gained this particular knowledge as well, how GitHub Action works, how to automate the workflows, and how the production deployment, what are the production fundamental deployments, that also we understood, and we have built an end-to-end CI/CD pipeline. So those are the things now we have mastered in, and these things are really going to help us in building further projects as well. So that's it for this particular series. So with this, I'm concluding this project series, and I hope you enjoy this particular series. I hope you have watched the previous videos as well. If you have missed, I would highly recommend to go ahead and check out that. Please feel free to share this series with your friends, and also if you want, you can add these particular projects into your resume. All these content, all these notes and everything is already available on my GitHub. You can check that link in the description. I have uploaded all the documents, all the code, everything, notes, everything is already uploaded. So yeah, please go ahead and hit a like, subscribe to our channel iTech, and if you are interested in more such videos, please do let me know in the comment section what next project series I should capture, what are the cloud technologies I should cover, and what are the other AI applications I should be focusing on building. So with this, let's end this particular series. Thank you for watching this series, and see you soon in the next interesting series. Thank you.